And we're live. Hey, everybody.
Okay.
We've got a wonderful day for y'all today. Welcome to Wednesday. Are we on Wednesday? Geez, no, it's Thursday. Today's Thursday on TLDChat. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. We always love it when we have a guest and we have giveaways and we have a nice big crowd to enjoy the day. But for those of you that may be new, actually, we probably have a lot of new folks here, it looks like, on TLDChat. And so I'm just going to spend a few minutes just kind of explaining and giving everybody a heads up on who we are and what we do. TLDChat is the training, learning, and development community. Look at that, right on command. And we are here basically to help you be better at doing the work of training, learning, and development. And by that, I mean we try desperately to get out of the clouds of theory and high-level discussions and really get down into the nuts and bolts of what it is that you do day in and day out. With your job, with your career, and who you are. We like to look at everything that we do in the realm of the rings of focus, we call them. At the center of the rings is you. You are the practitioner. You are the professional. And on Mondays, we focus on that very center portion of the ring. The next ring outside of that is project. So Tuesdays are project day. And Wednesdays, we then go out to teams, right? How do we build teams? How do we work better on a team? How do we manage our teams? What does the training team of the future look like in training, learning, and development? We had a great conversation yesterday with Marco Faccini from the UK, who joined us from an event he was attending, which was fantastic. Great conversation, great value add. And Marco is in the house. Good to see you, Marco. Thanks again for yesterday. And today's Thursday, and which means normally Thursday is organization and industry day, but when we have a special guest, a very, very special guest like RayJimenez, we get to talk about whatever we want because that's just how we roll. We get to do we don't like to stand on ceremony. TLDChat is in an informal place for us all to hang out and have those hallway conversations in a virtual forum. You know, the ones that you like at different events that you go to, and every time you leave, you always tell people, my favorite part about the event is probably just seeing all my friends and colleagues in those great hallway conversations. Well, we bring you a hallway conversation every single day. TLDChat, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time. And that's also Scotland time, I just found out yesterday. So, right, Bethany? It's good to have you here again as well. Good to see you in the chat. And one last thing before we jump in. Well, actually, I have two last things. But the first one is the Training, Learning, and Development Conference, TLDC 18. You can go to TLDC18.com, TLDC18.com, and get yourself registered for the event of the season. We're not in that season yet, but the New Year season, January 29th and 30th, we will be hanging out in beautiful, beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. People often ask, why in the heck would you do an event in Phoenix, Arizona? Actually, what they say is, why in the heck do you live in Phoenix, Arizona? And January, February, and March is really all I have to say. So we're doing this in January 29th and 30th. It couldn't be any more beautiful in January in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you've never been and you want a good excuse to come hang out for a while and see how we live in the desert here, I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And we're also going to have a pretty killer event lined up for you as well, with some fantastic speakers, activities, and lots and lots of different ways for you to expand your network, to grow your career, to get better at the work of training, learning, and development. So Thanks again, everybody, for hanging out today. We've got Ray Jimenez today, like I said, and we've got some giveaways today. I mentioned in the chat. So with so many people, I can't possibly let this opportunity go by and not give something away. So we have several different giveaways today. And the first one I will talk about is Snag It by TechSmith. The Snag It crew, the TechSmith crew, I should say, has been exceptionally supportive of TLDC. And they continue to be supportive by offering up Matt Pierce to us on Fridays, on Video Fridays, when he can attend and talk video stuff, microphones, video cameras, backdrops, lighting, project management in video production, all that great stuff. So it is a pleasure, and we appreciate so much having them on the show. And they give us these great giveaways. So we've already given away Camtasia a few times, and it was odd in the beginning because it always went to somebody in the UK. I believe all of our UK attendees ended up walking away with a copy of Camtasia. Not exactly sure how that works, but it was random, and so it just happens. So if any of you remember how that went down, that was kind of fun. But anyways, we're going to give away Snag It this time. And so all you have to do, there's 44 of you, jump over to tldc.us and get signed up for the newsletter. And give us a legit email or else we cannot contact you. And we promise we won't be spamming you with stuff. We will give you nothing but the best information that you need to stay connected with us and with the industry and the community that is growing so fast at TLDC. So, so sign up for that newsletter and hang out here for the show. We will do an export of the attendees and match those names up with the new names that showed up in the newsletter. And and we will do another random listing and random selection. And if you are chosen, we will reach out to you and do that. And I will tell you quickly, as we make our transition into talking with our guests today, Ray has offered to give out a copy of his book, or both of his books. But anyway, so we're going to have another giveaway as well. So we will see how we do that. Maybe we come up with something creative to do, but I'll let you all in the chat room think about that, and maybe you can help us decide how we're going to give those books away. But now I'm going to invite Ray into the window here and say, hi, Ray, good morning.
Hey, how are you doing, Brent?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining us. I forgot to put this up. So this is one of the books that we're going to be giving away that you are the author of, Scenario-Based Learning.
Pretty cool.
How long has that one been out?
Well, it's been out probably about 7 years already. And it's one of those projects that you spend years doing and then decide to write a book.
Fantastic. And I'm sure that all of the exercises are still relevant to today's world, and because scenario-based learning doesn't change much.
Yeah, very true.
Maybe you're using a different tool, but the concepts are the same, right?
Yeah, as long as you go fundamental enough that you can reuse the concept, it still works, and I think it's very valuable.
Yeah, so before we jump down to the questions, and let me just let everybody know, if you're new to the interface of this platform, there is a tab called Questions and Answers. Go ahead and select that, and then vote up what question you'd like us to be discussing, and you can also add your own questions. So feel free to do that while I ask Ray, just give us a background, right? Let's do a little introductory stuff here. Let's give some context to those who may not know who you are. How did you get into this industry?
Well, I started from the management consulting world. I don't know when. As you can see, I've lost all my hair, right? A long time ago. But it was an information management consulting. And then I went to management consulting with Coopers and Libran. And then I always end up the person implementing those darn systems. And that's how I fell into training and development. And I begin to love it. And it seems to be that I am able to think through the implementation process with how I started. And then we came into the traditional workshop business and then the CD-ROM business and started e-learning even when there was no internet. Could you imagine that? Even before the...
What? There was a time when there was no internet?
Like the e-learning, how do you call it? The GoDaddy was the only one you can get a domain name for. So the first e-learning was publishing your Dreamweaver and putting it to GoDaddy, and that's it. I mean, there was no LMS actually. So that's how old it is. So since then, that's my background to it, and I'm just trying to keep on reinventing and observe what is the need, what are the needs, and have fun.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? That's what you and I were just saying. We met in Utah at the Learning Dev Camp, and for those of you that weren't there, Ray and I both each delivered a keynote and had a good time doing it. And we were reminiscing already about at least we had fun.
Yeah, I remember Brent, you and I spoke in Florida when the YouTube was just starting to come in, right? How many years ago?
Yeah.
Right. So the CompTIA, that was the CompTIA conference.
Oh my gosh! Was it? Wow. Yeah,
before your e-learning guild stint.
Yeah, that was even before that, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, yeah. Times fly by. They definitely fly by. Well, all right. Let's now that everybody kind of has a good idea, and you're an author, you're a speaker, you've been a consultant, you still do consulting on this e-learning stuff. And so let's talk a little bit about this. So it looks like everybody is interested in story-based e-learning design and what kind of proof there is that it actually works. So I'm going to click the Start Answering button, and we can just jump right into it. So what is story-based learning? Is that the same thing as scenario-based learning?
Fundamentally, story-based learning is to use narrative, storytelling, but not the storytelling method that your grandmother and mine would teach us. Like, once upon a time, there was a princess who had an ugly frog. We know that storytelling that works too. But the way I define story-based learning is you use only the very emotional part of the story, and then you embed in it the content and connect the factual information inside the story. So that way we don't have a very long story. So generally what it is we're converting the content into a form of context so that the learner will quickly appreciate the content. That's it. And the difference between scenario is that scenario, well, this is an abused word, because there's so many scenarios out there that are like glorified memorization thing, right? So I don't call it scenario because those are just like memorization but put into branching. Scenario, at the heart of scenario is a story. And the mechanics is basically the scenario. A scenario without a story in it doesn't work. It becomes a memorization. So that's the distinction between the two.
And I would say that, I see Patty Shank is in the chat room also. Hi, Patty. From a learning perspective, what we know about how we learn and how we, the content that tends to stick the most is that content that is emotional. So I would say when people are asking about the proof and how it works, I would definitely say that, done well, right? Done, being able to embed the content you want people to learn into a story that has those emotional elements. And if you can pull on people's heartstrings or make them laugh or, any kind of affect any sort of increased emotions, that's where we get the value from, right? And we know that from the neuroscience.
Right. And the proof of it is that there are 2 or 3 ways to show proof. Neurosciences has already proved it that if you show a person only factual information, there's very little movements in the brain. If you show them a information with context, which story is only one form of context. There's a lot more activity in the brain. But a more practical, anecdotal way of doing it is that when you start your lesson, the learning objectives are you need to define so and so. Number two, you need to demonstrate you know how the skill. I made some study on this. I made a serious study on this. And when I compare that to a lesson that starts, what would happen to you if you don't wear your safety goggles? Those are two different lessons. A lot more people like the question with the safety goggles because quickly they can put themselves in the story. And it's like 80% more remember the story, remember the content. They remember, they make it easy to remember and to use the content. And finally, they get engaged. So without doing very far, I have this survey that I made, which is what I call an A and B survey, the learning objectives versus like what would happen to you. So there's very, very basic examples.
Yeah, it sounds to me like, yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. And I think I actually haven't come across objectives written the way we used to write them back in the 90s in a long time. So, you know, hopefully those lists on the first slide are being slowly wiped out, but I think they do still exist, and I think a lot of people they're mandated for a lot of people, I think, unfortunately. So yeah, it's interesting.
Right. The reality is that we have this huge compliance world and this huge big brother watching the content. So I always say, don't put the learning objectives in the first page. Put it somewhere that they can click on it wherever they are in the program, so you still have it there. But don't please interrupt your learners' engagement by slapping them in the face in the very first page of the learning objective. As you can see, I'm very blatant in my language, but that's what we do with our learners.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people get pretty tired of it. Let me go back. I was thinking about something when you were mentioning skills, and when I think through this stuff, one of the things that I've discovered in my career is that when it comes to skills, especially specific skills, I've found that if you try to get too fancy and add the story stuff, that it kind of gets in the way. So like sometimes when people want to learn skills, they do just want the list, whether you give it to them as a job aid on a piece of paper stuck on their laptop, and they're like, they do just want that support, right? And if you wrap a story around it, it sort of gets in the way.
Well, this is where the difference between storytelling and interactive story. So I agree with you that you have a job aid, right? They need a skill. The story is not in the job aid. The story is in the mind of the learner. So your job aid, although it's very factual, 1 to 10, will still have to mention what I call contextual setting in the job aid, because otherwise it will not register to their mind. It could be as simple as, I'll give you a good example. I have a client in Houston that tells me that the way they train people on dangerous items in the oil refinery is to say that was Joe's pump, a pump system for Joe's. So why do you call it Joe's pump? Is it because Joe died near that pump? Now, even if it's a procedure of 1 to 10 on how to tighten up the pump, when they remember something happened within the pump, they're likely going to think of the FAQ or the tips very helpful. So I agree with you that skill set is there, but we don't have to tell them a story. We just have to understand that the learner has the story in their mind. And that's what you call interactive story, to bring in those stories, experiences in their mind, so the tips, the FAQ, all of the tools registers very quickly and become useful.
Yeah, that's I have never thought of it like that, Ray. That is a fantastic point. I really, really like that. So Luis, mark this spot in the video. That will be a fantastic nugget to edit out later and share. Love that. Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do to expand upon that as well.
Yeah, and if I may, Brent, this is where I get challenged all the time. I say, Ray, how about scientific information? How about very complex calculation and all of those things? I said, yeah. I would like to quote a gentleman called John Ryland. He wrote a book on work-based learning, and he says, knowledge or information are only provisional material. Unless they are applied in real-life setting, they have no value. Now, the learner only applies those in their mind if they can see the value and the context of it. So in fact, most of the FAQs today, and even in the performance support, are still written by content, subject matter expert. It's very clear-cut learning, objective-based knowledge, like step 1 to 10. Who cares about step 1 to 10? Because in step 1 to 10, what might matter is only step 7. Why? Because step 7 is probably the most disastrous part of the content. So if you only add on a sentence and say, step 10 or step 7 creates so much damage in the pipeline, then you're now telling the learner there's a story behind it. You don't have to tell them the story. They have the story. All you're trying to do is to connect in their mind their own story. And as Patty had mentioned in there, you're adding the emotion so that you're not forgetting it. Now, this is very hopeful because all of us are done classroom training, right? If I'm going to ask the hand to everybody's the classroom training. Classroom trainers are very good at story design. Otherwise, they'll boo you out of the room. You have a natural feeling to ad-lib examples, stories, demos. You have that all the time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when we go online, we abdicate that part. We just do the objective knowledge, and we completely wipe out the context. So I'm not talking about something completely new. The only difference is that we need to understand that we don't have to create the story. The story is already in the mind of the learners. All you need to do is to trigger it so that they click quickly to the content.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love that idea of of triggering that story. Are there any very specific examples that you can think of? Like let's before we hit the 8:30 mark today, let's drill down a little bit more deeply into this. I really like this. This is a new conversation for us, even here in TLDChat as well. So what would that look like very specifically? I mean, you've hit on a few things, but in the context of everybody that's here, right? They may be e-learning designers or consultants or whatever. What is it that they would be doing? Would they be adding this into one of their authoring tools, that ability to trigger the story within their mind? Or are we talking, performance support tools, video,
Right. It's actually very agnostic. The concept is very agnostic. You can do it in a classroom, you can do it in a flip chart, you can do it in anything. The bottom line of it is simple, and maybe a good short case study will show you. I work with a bottling company, one of the largest in the world. So they have this 12-week Six Sigma statistical analysis engineering courses.
Yeah.
They have about 12 binders. And the guy says, Dre, it's easy to do an e-learning on this. Go, why? We have about 200 PowerPoints. So we can put all the PowerPoints and we'll do it quickly. I said, okay, I'm out of here because, I know that that's easy, but it doesn't necessarily mean right. So they agreed that we interview their engineers. So we asked one question to the engineers, and the engineer said, what matters to us is where the breakdowns are, where the barriers are on the job, where are the snaffles, where are the waste, where are the errors. So then we asked them, how would you want to learn it? And they said, give us incidents, give us cases, give us situations. So now, instead of having a typical definition of statistical analysis, definition of a seal, definition of a lubricant, which is what they sit for hours and hours being lectured to, what we did was to simply say, let's identify those that matters on the job. And then start with those. Become very simple. For example, a good story would be if you're looking at a pipeline and there's a small leak in the pipeline, what do? Then you let the learners think through it. What would you do in that situation? You give them some references. They have to figure it out. That's the way they want to learn. They don't want to be learned to be spoon-fed. So you wonder, why is it story design? It is story design because you're putting the learner into a real-life incident. And naturally, they will bring in their own interpretation of that incident, which is a story. So you don't have to call it a story. I call it incident, real-life situations, errors, ways, backlog. I don't even want to call best practices because that's an overused word, but something that you've done right. So there's only two ways to, what you did right and what you did wrong will come up with good stories.
Yeah.
So that's a good example that I felt is very useful to anyone. So you can use it in the classroom and to micro-learning and to social media. It's agnostic. Anything you do, when you open up a newspaper today, what do? They always start like, a little girl named Nancy was abducted and the parents was crying. That's what they do. You don't start by simply saying at 12 o'clock in the morning, a car came in and Nancy was abducted. No, they don't do it that way because nobody's going to read the entire article, right? So anyway.
That's fantastic. Well, I think for me, so everybody, most of the regulars that hang out here know I'm a big proponent of video and live video in this format. And I start to see what you're talking about. And when you say, naturally, right, this natural storytelling, when people are teaching in a classroom and instructing, I see that the ability to live stream video within today's newer platforms and applications this is where the power of those tools come into play, right? An engineer can, or somebody out in the field can pick up their mobile device and quickly do a live stream and tell that story, right? They're not looking into their live stream and going, here's what I did today. Step one, I did this. Step two, I did this. No, they're not. They're saying, you know what just happened? And they start to tell a story. And then that story gets captured as a digital artifact that gets saved and people can utilize that later. That's where I see the incredible power of the giving everybody in your organization that ability to capture video in the moment, right? In the moment they're going through it, and I won't talk about all the reasons why people fear it for some reason, but to me, that is what is incredibly powerful about today's technology.
Right. Absolutely. In fact, you'd notice it. People say that YouTube is great. Yeah, it's great. But the successful ones tells a story. It starts with a story. So inherently, this is so natural to us because we're just sharing experiences.
Yeah.
This is just sharing experiences.
Yeah, why do we complicate things so much?
Yeah, don't make it so complicated. Just share your story. If you don't like to use the story, share your experience. Right?
Yeah.
Then when they share an experience, they have the content part of the story.
Yeah.
Because you cannot separate them.
Yep.
They always go hand in hand together.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can't have a good story without content.
Absolutely.
Because you're telling the story for a reason, so it's kind of naturally part of the deal.
Right. So in my workshops, the problem is how to match a incident with a good story.
Right.
Because a lot of people make this difficult. It's not difficult. When you identify an incident like there's fire going on, automatically stories come in. However, if you'd say, what is the definition of OSHA 101? There is no story that comes to the mind of the learner. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
Counter to the brain,
Yeah, that's, what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance or something like that, right? Hey, listen, we're at the 8:30 mark, and so far so good, Anthony and crew. I actually did it right at 8:30. So hold on one second, Ray. I'm going to go full screen on this again, and
Sure.
Go ahead and jump into the chat and chat with people while I just make a few announcements here real quick at the 8:30 mark. So, like I said, folks, Ray is kind enough to be giving away his book. Actually, not even just one, but two of his books. So please go ahead and sign up for our newsletter at tldc.us and hang out with us today. So you're already here if you're listening to me. So that's step one. And being signed up for the newsletter is step two. We put the two of those together in a list, and we do a random selection from that list, and we decide who is the magical winner. And so we have Luis in the background working diligently to make all of the magic happen, and which is fantastic. And so we'll probably wait till later on today to announce all of the winners, because we have so many people in here to go through and get this done. So we'll be sure to announce before the end of the day today, or at the very least at the end of by the end of the week. But we'll be giving away some books and Snag It from TechSmith, our fantastic and fun friends over at TechSmith that support us so greatly and allow us to have Matt Pierce on Video Fridays. So always a good time. But we've got TLDC 18 coming up, and I just have to give a shout out to everybody that's in the chat room who was at TLDC 16. Thank you all so much for supporting the very first event that Luis and I put together last year, and it was a overwhelmingly exciting moment for the two of us, and so we're doing it again. And January 29th and 30th we'll be in Phoenix, Arizona for TLDC 18, and following up on the innovative nature of the event and doing things differently. We've been hearing from lots of people over our years in the L&D industry at events, and we've heard what people are saying about events. We hear you. We know you want something different. We know you want something fresh, and that was all of you, without a doubt, were the drivers behind making TLDC happen, making it come to life. We would not have done this if we didn't think there was a real need, and that if we didn't think we were helping you, if we didn't think there was some value that we could add, we certainly wouldn't be doing this. So we feel like we're adding value every day and in the event as well. And we really appreciate your support, and we look to you. We look to the community to tell us, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What would you like us to do? If this was your community, which it is, tell us, what do you want to be different? What would you like to get out of a community? This is a great opportunity for you to build your network, to move forward in your career, and to be a part of something new. Those of you that have maybe grown tired and weary of the existing events and event structures that are out there, feel free to hang out with us and let us know what you think, what could be different, where we can make a difference in the training and learning and development community. So whether you're doing the work of training, or whether you're doing the work of learning and development, or whether you're one of those folks who does both, we're here for you. And this is for you, and this is your event. We've made it power packed, full of value at an affordable price, and we're going to be making sure that it is an event you'll most certainly remember. Telling a lot of stories, because as Ray has mentioned, and as we've been discussing, that's where the money is. Right, being able to move people emotionally, add context, give that type of value, and knowing exactly what it is that you need. And you know what? I forgot to hit the stop answering button. But anyway, so that's that. So the TLDC 18 event coming up, you can either hit up tldc.us and hit the conference link, or you can go straight to tldc18.com. I will also tell everybody that's here, please click the share button right underneath the video there, and share that we're hanging out with Ray Jimenez on all of your favorite social networks: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, You know, you never know if one of you that really, really, really wants a book, or that really, really, really wants to win Snag It today, you know, go ahead and send out a tweets, and you know, share the love with all of your friends that you're hanging out here. And maybe we'll throw in an extra copy or two to somebody who does a creative Facebook post, helping to share the love. So that might be another fun way that we look into. So you never know. We've done crazier things here. So you never know what's going to happen. But you can go ahead and do that as well. You can also sign up for the newsletter actually right on this screen. If you look underneath the video, there's a big green button that says sign up for our newsletter. You can go ahead and click it there. Just above that as well, we are still in the process of trying to figure out how to keep this TLDChat and the community and the event up and running. All of these things take finances and resources. We don't charge for anything other than the event. We have a small registration fee. But we're trying to figure out, and hopefully we were hoping that we could get by on just donations. You know, if you feel like we're giving you some value, if you feel like you got some value today, Crowdcast, this platform, has a contribution button where you can just, you know, click that button and, you know, drop a couple bucks in the tip jar just to let us know, hey, you know what, we really appreciate you having Ray on today and sharing his knowledge with us. So anyways, let me get right back to it. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for hanging out today. This is a big crowd, and I believe this is a record crowd. So thank you, Ray, for bringing in such a great group of folks. And we're into the second half. So let's talk micro learning. Ray, what do you say?
Well, first I invited my mother-in-law, and she sent to all her friends. But anyway, thanks everyone for coming in. I just love to see the folks, Kara, Anna, and everybody. Katie, it's great to have you here. So
it is good stuff. Good stuff.
Micro learning is interesting. Now, what happened is that in about 10 years ago, I wrote a book on 3-minute e-learning.
Okay.
And because I could not comprehend, why are we having this internet? And we could not go in and out and learn. We have to stay in for an hour to finish it. And we have a lot of testing. So I could not comprehend it. So early 9 years ago, I wrote a book on 3-minute e-learning. And the bottom line is simple. The learners with the internet, not because of the internet, but the learners really are unable to focus long learning processes. So they need to really just go to a content and use the content very quickly.
Yep.
But more importantly today, with the rapid change in workplaces, what I have discovered is this. The learning industry, the training industry has been stuck with, and I might be strongly saying this, has been following the process of designing needs analysis, task analysis, all of this beautiful content. But every time they become so removed from the reality of work, right? They're too far apart. It's like, you know, it's like heaven and earth, or maybe not hell and heaven, but kind of a east and west or north and south. They don't meet, right?
Yeah.
And this continues as a cycle. Then suddenly microlearning came in and says, hey, let's use microlearning. When what everybody's doing, they're still doing it like as if in the West.
Yeah.
It's still very far from work.
Yep.
So my basic premise and my work with my clients focuses on look at the workflow. And in the workflow, you're attending a sales manager's meeting or you're attending a production meeting, listen to them because they have problems every day.
Yep.
Their problems every day is so real. So the traditional instructional designer would say, hey, I know your problem. Let's come up with a needs analysis. Right? Okay. Ping, you know. Ping, you know. The practical know-nothing-all person who just knows the website, he says, hey, I love your answer. Can I just write it up, please? Tell me the answer. I will put it in the portal.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's why many of our jobs today are taken over those people who doesn't know anything about learning, but they are in the workflow and they convert something in the workflow and they put it online.
Yep.
And this is also very evident in YouTube, right? So micro learning is just uh, uh, in fact, the worst thing that we have done with micro learning is the word learning.
Is the worst thing we've done with micro learning is actually call it micro learning.
Right. This is kind of a disaster. So my alternative word is actually we are supporting micro actions.
Oh, excellent.
Because we're supporting an action. There's every time the learner says, I need to fix something, I need to solve something, I need to improve something, where do I go? If your content is very near, very useful because of its own format design, then they grab it and use it. If it is a program, why am I going to read a program and in the production line?
Yeah. You can't stop and take a 2-hour e-learning course when you're
even a 5-minute introduction of the part. You don't want to do that, right? So it's counter.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the comment is perfect for me to jump in here and just because I get so I try really hard not to talk about the company that I work for. I work for Edcast right now, and one of the things that I really love and why I joined the company and why I see their product as being so incredibly powerful is exactly what you just mentioned. They're able to put the content right into the workflow. If somebody's in salesforce.com, if somebody is in Slack, if somebody is in any other tool, those learning nuggets, those micro nuggets can be just delivered just in the right place at the right time. And it's not a lot of hassle. It's just there. It shows up if you want it. There's the recommendation engine, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I see this as absolutely the future. And so it's great to hear you echo that. You know, I mentioned it a little bit in my my keynote last week at Learning Dev Camp and talked about, right, we've got content because you got to have content. We talk about collaboration. You got to be able to talk about the content that you just posted, if it's a story, if it's a video, but then it's got to be in the context of the job. You got to put that content into the context of the work, or at the very least, as close to it as you possibly can, which gives you that value. So one of the first questions here on micro learning is, have you implemented micro learning?
Yes, a few hundred times.
I was just going to say.
Why?
Well,
Why?
okay, that was done.
Because I have been doing it ever since I started e-learning.
Yeah. I was going to say, a lot of us have been doing it since before it was called micro learning. We just didn't know.
Right. Yeah, and by the way, this is not an exclusive thing owned by RayJimenez. Everybody who understands this principle, they're doing it, right? YouTube, etc., and the like. However, the more I keep on studying this is what I discovered. I try to analyze what the worker does, and it's really very simple. The worker says, "I'm on the job. I need to fix, solve, and improve something." Now, second question would be, where do I go to find the answer? Do I check my experience? Do I check other people? Do I check the documentation? Right?
Yep.
And then finally, the learner would say, what will I make sure that I will not do again in the future because I'll hit myself again? 3 basic questions. So if you're designing content, you design the content to match this. Very simple. Match the content. It's only 1 sentences. I'll give you an idea. I have a project right now with the Homeland Security. The problem is knowledge obsolescence. What they teach 6 months ago is irrelevant today. What they teach 3 weeks ago is irrelevant today. So what are they doing? They're asking everyone to come up with SMS, text. But what are they texting? Answer to 3 questions. What did I fix? What did I improve? What did I solve? How did I do it? And then thirdly, what did I learn? And what will I make sure to repeat next time? This is just basically 100 words or 200 words. So now the database captures all of them, tags them, organizes them, but it is not no video, no PowerPoint, no presentation, no interaction. Why? Because the interaction is already in the mind of the learner because it's there, it's in their brain, right? So for me, this is micro action, and this is the solution. So instead of starting like a big importing 100 pages of PowerPoint, oh my God, I'm tired already just looking at this program.
I'm tired of thinking about PowerPoint. Just you saying the words makes me tired.
So the answer to that question is that indeed I have, and many of you have. The only thing is that we need to be aware that that's the new opportunity now, and therefore every chance you have, do it. You don't have to get the permission to implement a long-term strategy on microlearning. There's no such thing. Once you get it, once you hear somebody, I made a fix, publish it in your portal.
Yeah.
Don't wait for an authoring tool like buying Captivate or buying Storyline. Just do it, and do it consistently.
Yeah.
And before you know it, if you have 200 of that or 100 of that, people are saying, I love what you're doing. You know why? The biggest criteria I have with microlearning, it is useful.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's in no other field can you say by doing less will you be more respected. Stop
and
do
also
less of what you're doing because we will like you much more.
Well, the biggest challenge we have is that a consultant approached me about 3 weeks ago and said, you know what, Ray, I love what you're doing, I love what you're saying, but don't say it aloud. I said, why? Because I charge my client by the number of pages of content.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa, I never look at it that way. So it's really a threat.
To a certain extent, it is. It's a threat to the old guard. It's a threat to the traditional ways of doing things. All of the different business models that have been created around the old way of doing training are absolutely needing to shift, right? And this is just normal. It's nobody's fault. It's not like we're out here trying to crush an industry. We're just, wanting to talk about what's changing and how we can all benefit from that. So here's another great question from Bethany real quick. What is the main differentiator of micro learning from other forms of learning other than the relative size of the courses?
Number one, micro learning has nothing to do with size. Once you get somebody telling you that micro learning, your first job is to resize your content, no. Because you resize the content for what? For lecturing them in a smaller way? It doesn't work. So the real value of microlearning is looking for the quickest opportunity in the workflow to insert the learner when you need it. So if you're going to start microsizing the content, it becomes different. So what's the difference between size? Size is not the criteria. The criteria is that how you make it smaller. You might need 10 one-minute microlearning. You might need only 1 hour. It's a microlearning because you're a pilot. When a pilot goes to all of these huge checklists, they might need an hour. For them, that's microlearning, right? Yeah. Instead of attending for 5 weeks, right? So the criteria is not size. And this is what it's like, oh my God, this company reproduced their 1,000 videos. Instead of 15 minutes now, they're like 2 minutes. So my joke, Brent, is something like this. In the video, the speaker was saying, oh my God, you should do this, you should follow the policy. And then now when it's a 1 minute micro video, you know what the speaker appears saying? They got
to talk faster.
They compress the content. That's not micro learning. Sorry, folks. I'm just being, I'm having fun, really. But that's exactly what happened.
It does it. I see it. I see that all too often, right? We take a lot of this stuff a little bit too literally when we use these words and when we define things, and I think for a lot of people naturally it makes sense to do that kind of thing, right? Like if you've got a 1 hour course, why not break it up into chunks? Because like you were mentioning earlier, let's take this full circle back with speakers and instructors, right? Good instructors, good teachers have always known that they don't do any concept longer than about 10 minutes in the classroom even, right? Tell a story, give the context, wrap it up, and then boom, at that 10-minute mark, it's time to move on to another topic with something exciting, or else you've lost your classroom. Good teachers just naturally know that. And so, of course, we try to do the same thing. I've often told people, if you're going to do an hour's worth of training, or if the course for compliance reasons or whatever has to be an hour long, think of it like if you were standing up in front of the classroom and design the course in those 10-minute or less chunks, because then you can deliver them in those 10-minute chunks. But if somebody wants to take the whole hour, they can watch, they can watch 6 different 10-minute chunks and have interspersed activities throughout the whole thing, right? So I think, like you said, we've always been doing it, at least when we've been doing our jobs well. We've had that ebb and flow of the content, but now digitally we can separate it, I guess is the point, right? Like we can.
That's the biggest advantage, because we have newer tools, and we can reinforce the way people naturally learn. And one thing I want to add in here is that I respect truly the value of intensive learning, right? Like in the classroom, there's a space for that. There are things you can learn on a very nitty-gritty, face-to-face, practical application. There's a space for that. But there are situations that the workplace, in any workplace, is coming so rapidly that we have to be very selective where we put in those 1-hour courses. Now, even compliance program, Brent, my suggestion to compliance program is still divide it into micro-learning units.
Yeah.
Start with a story, start with a micro lesson. If there are like 20 of them, you send it one by one. And then if you want a new person to come in, you string it together as a course, right? And the LMS can do this, LCMSs can do this. You string them together, but you don't encapsulate them and force them, because if I'm on the workplace, I want to go to lesson 5. I don't want to go to lesson 1, So then you can have 2 ways to publish it independently, and then require people to also see the strung together lessons.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that's going to be a great place for us to start wrapping up today, so that I can be sure to hit it at the 9 o'clock hour. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I have a tendency to go way over, and so I'm going to try to be better about that. But Ray, any closing comments or on micro learning or scenario-based learning you'd like to share?
Right. I am very honored. I'd like to thank a lot of my collaborators. We have some around the workshops, and we have a lot of people helping us out to run it. I'm also very happy to report to you, by the end of August, I'm publishing a book on micro-learning. And all of these are like, after I lost all my hair, I have now white hair, trying to bang my head to the wall on what this is. So I'm publishing a book on that. But my final word of thought is really that we are such a real great opportunity as trainers, and there's just tremendous abundance of opportunity. Of course, there are challenges, right? But there's incredible opportunity. So I wish luck everyone, and have fun doing this.
Fantastic. What a great way to end. Thank you, Ray. Really, really appreciate you being here. And tell us again where people can find you.
They can go to vignettslearning.com, VIGNETTES learning.com, or my Twitter at Ray Jimenez, and you'll see all the information about me there.
And they can find all the content. Fantastic. Listen, Ray, again, I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you for both of you and Luis. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, we will definitely have you back, because there's a lot more to talk about. And hey, let us know as you get closer to launching your book. We'll have you back on, and we'll just make it a whole show about your book, and we'll do a book launch for you. How about that?
I will even serve virtual margarita.
Oh, excellent. All right. I could use a few of those at 8 in the morning.
Okay, Brent. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and close your video, but you'll still be here, and so you can still be in the chat.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye, Ray.
I'll be here.
Hey, everybody. What a great Thursday. What a great way to start your day. Fantastic conversation with Ray Jimenez on scenario-based learning and micro-learning, right? Micro-learning is a hot topic, and things are changing. Like Ray said, we've been doing this kind of stuff, for a long time now. We're just giving it names, and we now have tools at our disposal in the industry that make it a lot easier for us to do our jobs differently. And this disruption and this change requires some reskilling of ourselves. And so having these conversations and getting together with you all in a platform like this, I think is a fantastic opportunity. And so I'm always so grateful to folks like Ray who are willing to jump in and share their knowledge with us and help us all move from the traditional ways of doing training, learning, and development and move us into this 21st century model of micro-learning, contextual learning, all the different buzzwords, whatever you want to call it, it's changing, right? And it's different. And we need to have these conversations to make it happen. So again, very grateful for Ray to be hanging out here with us today and having this conversation. And I just noticed in the chat as we were going by, a couple folks did make contributions and made mention of it in the chat. And we sure do appreciate it, without a doubt, to help us. It not only helps the TLDChat function financially as far as paying for some of the back end infrastructure to make this happen every single day, but it also tells us that you care, and it shows us that you are really getting some value out of this event, and that what we're doing is good, and we will continue to do it. But again, if you've already given, giving of your time and helping us out as well is fantastic. I just want to give a quick shout out before we close to Kara North and Craig and so many other people are behind the scenes helping Luis and I really make this happen. There's so much that goes into just making notes, for example, and putting links into the chat and really adding that extra value. You can go to our website and you can see all of our past episodes with all of the notes, all of the links, anything that was discussed will be right there. And that takes that takes a little bit of effort and some extra time. And so I just want to give a very special shout out to those who have volunteered their time to be a part of TLDChat and support the TLD community. So we really do appreciate that. And just one last shout out for TLDC18.com, the event coming up, Phoenix, Arizona, January 29th and 30th. Coming up, hit up the website, get registered, register your friends. We've already got teams of folks from the Arizona and the Phoenix area signing up, coming out as a group, which I think is going to be fun, and it's going to be a fantastic time. The more people that sign up, and the more I look through it and see who they are and the type of work they do, the more energized I get, knowing that we're absolutely going to be able to help them and help improve their training and their learning and development in whatever format they need help. So super psyched about that. And it looks like Luis rolled the dice for the Snagit license. So we do have a winner that we will be announcing. Luis, I don't know if you want me to announce it here with my 1 minute remaining, or if we just want to save it for a social media announcement. Let's save it. Oh, well, there we go. Ebony's our winner. I didn't even see Ebony in the chat, but there she is. Hey, all right. Yeah, spoiler alert. All right, we'll get connected with you via email and let you know. We'll send you all of your fabulous winnings. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us today. Wow, such a big crowd, a great crowd. Really appreciate seeing all of you here, and yeah, I hope you all come back. Right, those of you that are new that haven't hung out with us, listen, we're here every single day, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 4 p.m. UK time, or Marco time as we like to call it. But I'm out of here. Everybody have a great day. It has been a fantastic show. We will talk to you later.